Stop right there before you throw that Uniqlo t-shirt in your cart. If you think you know what you're getting when you step into one of their stores or click on their online store, you're dead wrong. Uniqlo is hiding something so big that it could completely change how you view this brand. After hearing this, you'll never shop there again. You're probably wondering, what could possibly be wrong with Uniqlo? It's a global fashion icon with minimalist designs and affordable prices. What's the catch? The catch is this: Uniqlo is tricking you. And it's not just about their price tags. There's a lot more going on under the surface than you'd ever expect. Now, get ready, because I'm about to reveal secrets about Uniqlo that will shock you. And trust me, once you know these, you'll never see Uniqlo in the same way again. The shocking truth about affordable quality. We've all been there. The bright lights, the neatly stacked shelves, the endless rows of basic, stylish clothing. You think to yourself, this is such a steal. Affordable quality, great prices, what could go wrong? Well, here's the problem. Uniqlo's idea of quality isn't what it seems. Sure, their clothes are great for that minimalist look. And yeah, those $20 fleece jackets seem like a deal. But here's where it gets ugly. Uniqlo's clothes often feel like they're one wash away from falling apart. And it's not because you got a bad batch. It's because they're built to deteriorate. Let's talk about how and why they do this, and how it impacts you. When you walk into Uniqlo, you're not just buying an item of clothing. You're walking into a well-crafted illusion. They've mastered the art of selling you clothes that look good, feel good, and then fall apart before they even hit your closet. But they don't want you to notice. Because once it falls apart, you're back for more, right? It's all part of their business model. They're playing the long con, and you're paying for it in the form of poor quality materials and cheap manufacturing. But it's not just about the clothes falling apart. It's about how they got you to buy them in the first place. You thought you were getting a bargain, right? Guess again. Uniqlo's pricing strategy is built to manipulate you into thinking you're saving. But what you're really getting is a product that's designed to keep you coming back over and over again. And trust me, it's not by accident. It's all by design. The environmental nightmare you're supporting by shopping at Uniqlo. Let's get real for a second. We all know the fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters in the world. But Uniqlo has made it its business to keep you in the dark about the dirty impact it's having on our planet. Here's a reality check. Uniqlo isn't as sustainable as they want you to think. They advertise their clothing as eco-friendly and have some sustainability initiatives plastered all over their marketing materials. But the truth is far darker. The fast fashion supply chain is one of the biggest contributors to global waste and pollution, and Uniqlo is right there at the top of the pile. Uniqlo is notorious for their constant production cycle, cranking out more clothes faster than you can say sail. And these clothes are not designed to last. What does this mean for the planet? Well, let's just say that those cheap clothes you love so much are contributing to a mountain of textile waste. The materials they use, mostly synthetic fabrics like polyester, don't just fall apart, they pollute. These fibers are non-biodegradable, which means they'll be sitting in landfills for centuries. Now, we all want to make better choices, right? But Uniqlo's green marketing tricks you into thinking their clothes are somehow better for the environment. So you buy into it, right? It's all part of their brilliant marketing deception. It's designed to make you feel good about yourself while you're filling your wardrobe with stuff that contributes to one of the biggest environmental crises of our time. How? By making you believe that you're making better choices without actually having to think twice. The truth is, their clothes have a much higher environmental cost than you realize. While you're throwing that basic, sustainable t-shirt in your cart, you're actually supporting a brand that's feeding the vicious cycle of waste and pollution. It's a shocking reality that you need to face before you buy into the next green campaign Uniqlo launches. If you care about the future of the planet, Uniqlo isn't where you should be spending your money. The eco-friendly spin, the ultimate greenwashing scam. Now, let's talk about greenwashing. Uniqlo is a master at using buzzwords like eco-friendly and sustainable. But in reality, it's just a marketing gimmick. They'll slap the word sustainable on the label of just about anything. The recycled fabrics they use are minimal at best, and often just recycled polyester, which is more of a feel-good buzzword than an actual environmental solution. They'll tell you it's better for the planet, but the truth is, it's just a cheap ploy to make you feel like your purchase matters, when it really doesn't. And don't even get me started on their conscious clothing collections or lifewear initiative. Uniqlo's sustainable lines are nothing but a smokescreen to cover up the real impact of their production practices. These items might have recycled elements, but they're still produced at a rate that's unsustainable, leading to massive amounts of waste. It's a classic example of greenwashing, a marketing tactic that makes you feel like you're doing something good for the environment, when, in fact, you're still part of the problem. Uniqlo's approach to sustainability is a joke. It's not about being genuinely responsible. It's about appealing to eco-conscious consumers, while still operating in the same polluting manner that fast fashion brands have always done. It's time to stop falling for the eco-friendly facade and start questioning where your clothes are really coming from. Now that we've uncovered the ugly truth about Uniqlo's marketing spin, let's get into something even more shocking. Uniqlo isn't just exploiting the environment and misleading consumers. There's a dark side to their business practices that you need to know about. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into how Uniqlo's supply chain impacts real people. And trust me, you won't believe what's been happening behind closed doors. The true cost of affordable fashion, human suffering behind Uniqlo's low prices. So, we've already discussed Uniqlo's environmentally questionable practices, but let's now focus on what's happening behind the scenes in their factories. You thought Uniqlo was just about affordable basics? That's only part of the story. The truth is far more sinister, and it's not about workers receiving a fair wage or working in decent conditions. Uniqlo has a dark reputation when it comes to its labor practices, and it's time we shed some light on it. Uniqlo's supply chain stretches across Asia, with factories in countries like China, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, countries that are notorious for cheap labor and exploitation. The company sources materials from places where workers are paid pennies and forced to work extremely long hours in unsafe conditions. How do they keep those low prices you love? By exploiting cheap labor and sacrificing workers' rights in the process. Here's what you're not told when you buy that cute Uniqlo sweater. While the price may seem like a bargain, workers who make those clothes are often subjected to appalling conditions. We're talking about unpaid overtime, unsafe machinery, and living wages that barely cover the cost of food, let alone basic healthcare. In fact, a large percentage of the workers in Uniqlo's factories live in poverty, working long shifts in dangerous environments, with little to no protection. Workers in these factories face grueling work schedules. Some are forced to work up to 16 hours a day during peak seasons, often without adequate rest or meals. Despite the fact that Uniqlo is one of the biggest fashion brands globally, it has come under fire for not doing enough to ensure safe working conditions for its employees. This isn't just one bad factory, it's a widespread issue throughout the brand's global supply chain. So next time you grab that $12 t-shirt, remember, it's not just the workers who are getting shortchanged, you are too, because this affordable quality comes with a huge hidden cost, and that cost is the blood, sweat, and tears of people whose only crime is trying to earn enough to survive. That's the real price of the cheap, fast fashion you're buying, but let's not stop there. While the exploitation of workers is a huge issue, there's something even darker lurking behind Uniqlo's operations, because this next point isn't just about poor working conditions. It's about something more insidious that affects everyone involved, from the consumers to the communities where Uniqlo operates. Uniqlo's global supply chain, exploiting communities. Imagine walking into a Uniqlo store and looking at all those chic, minimalist pieces on display. You might think to yourself, wow, this brand is so affordable and high quality. But that shiny exterior is hiding a deeply problematic truth. Uniqlo's supply chain is built on exploitation, not just of workers, but of entire communities. What you don't realize when you buy a Uniqlo hoodie or those trendy jeans is that corporations like Uniqlo profit by exploiting the very communities where they set up shop. They create jobs, yes, but these jobs are often nothing more than low-wage, low-skill positions that don't improve the lives of local workers or their families. Instead, these factories create a cycle of poverty where workers are trapped in a situation they can't escape. In many of these developing countries where Uniqlo operates, the brand takes advantage of the weak labor laws and lax environmental regulations. This means unethical practices like child labor and unsafe working conditions thrive under Uniqlo's watch. The company isn't just exploiting workers' time, it's also exploiting local communities by paying them as little as possible and offering no benefits. Worse still, the communities are left to deal with the aftermath. Many of the factories where Uniqlo operates dump toxic chemicals and waste into nearby rivers and soil, creating massive environmental damage. These communities, already struggling with poverty, are now also forced to deal with the health impacts of living near these polluted areas. That's right, Uniqlo's factories aren't just exploiting labor, they're poisoning the environment and leaving local people to pick up the pieces. This is the hidden cost that comes with every $12 t-shirt you purchase from Uniqlo. It's not just a low price, it's a price that destabilizes entire communities while Uniqlo gets richer by the minute. Uniqlo is profiting from exploitation, and it's happening under the radar because the company is very good at keeping these things out of sight. But the reality is, you are part of this system every time you buy from Uniqlo. Uniqlo's shady ethical sourcing claims. By now, you're probably asking, but what about all of their claims about ethical sourcing and fair trade practices? You've heard the slogan, right? Uniqlo loves to market itself as a brand that cares about the environment and the people who make their clothes. They boast about their ethical sourcing and sustainable materials in their marketing, but guess what? It's all smoke and mirrors. Here's the reality. Uniqlo's ethical claims are often exaggerated or completely misleading. Yes, they've made some small efforts to improve their practices, like using recycled fabrics and reducing their carbon footprint. But these efforts are nowhere near enough to justify the massive environmental impact that the company continues to have. Their greenwashing tactics are meant to make you feel good about spending money with them. But the truth is far from the sustainable dream they sell. For instance, one of their recycled fabric initiatives is actually just polyester, which is far from eco-friendly. It takes up to 200 years for polyester to break down in a landfill, and the process of recycling polyester is energy intensive and creates harmful emissions. So when Uniqlo tells you it's helping the planet by using recycled polyester, just remember, it's still plastic. Uniqlo has also been heavily criticized for lack of transparency when it comes to their factories. They say they're committed to improving working conditions, but they don't actually provide enough information about the factories where their clothing is produced. Without full transparency, how can we know for sure if they're truly committed to ethical practices? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've only scratched the surface of what's going on with Uniqlo. Now, we're going to take it up a notch and get into the true environmental cost behind Uniqlo's cheap, fast fashion. Buckle up, because the next part will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this brand. Uniqlo's lack of transparency. Why you're not getting the full story. At this point, it's pretty clear that Uniqlo's image is far from spotless. But what you might not have realized is just how deeply entrenched their lack of transparency goes. If you've ever heard Uniqlo boast about their sustainability reports or their ethical sourcing practices, you may have assumed you were getting the full picture. But here's the truth. What Uniqlo doesn't show you is just as important as what they do. Let's break this down. Uniqlo is notorious for its lack of transparency, especially when it comes to disclosing where its clothes are made, who makes them, and the real environmental impact of their production. Sure, they have fancy-sounding reports that mention sustainability and worker welfare, but do they actually show us where the factories are, who the suppliers are, or what the real wages are for workers? The answer is no. When brands like Uniqlo tout their responsible practices, it often hides the dirty truth. They don't want you to look too closely at the details. Uniqlo's reports might tell you they're reducing emissions, but they don't talk about the supply chain that's feeding their factories with cheap labor, often violating workers' rights in the process. The reports might boast about using recycled polyester and reduced water usage, but they don't mention the huge amounts of energy used to manufacture synthetic fabrics, or the tens of thousands of garments that are discarded and wasted at the end of each season. Transparency should mean being honest about every step of the supply chain, but Uniqlo doesn't have a habit of doing that. Instead, they hide behind loopholes, smoke and mirrors, and vague statements that make it difficult to pin down the specifics. And that's not all. Uniqlo refuses to release data about how many factories they work with and who those factories are. This lack of transparency isn't just a bad look. It's a deliberate attempt to prevent consumers from understanding the true cost of their clothes. In a world where socially responsible brands are opening up about their practices, Uniqlo's refusal to share crucial details about its factories and supply chain speaks volumes. It leaves us to wonder, what are they hiding? What aren't they telling us? It's time we stop falling for the marketing and demand the full transparency we deserve as consumers. When you buy a t-shirt, hoodie, or jacket from Uniqlo, You're not just buying a piece of clothing, you're buying into their hidden agenda. That's a price you can't see, but you're still paying it. So next time you pull a $15 t-shirt off the shelf, ask yourself, do I really know where this came from? And what price are others paying for it? Uniqlo's real environmental toll, waste, water, and harmful chemicals. Now that we've peeled back the layers on Uniqlo's lack of transparency, it's time to talk about something even more disturbing, the real environmental toll of Uniqlo's operations. You've heard the term fast fashion thrown around a lot, right? But Uniqlo takes that concept to a whole new level. They're not just churning out clothes at record speed. They're doing it in a way that's devastating to the planet. The sad truth? Uniqlo's massive production cycle is contributing to the textile waste crisis in a big way. Think about it. Uniqlo's business model is all about constant turnover, quick, cheap, disposable fashion. That cool jacket you see hanging on the rack might only stay relevant for a few months before it's marked down or replaced by the next seasonal collection. But what happens to all those clothes after they're discarded? Spoiler alert, they don't just disappear. Textile waste is one of the fastest growing environmental problems, and Uniqlo is one of the biggest offenders. Every year, millions of tons of clothes are thrown away, and much of that comes from fast fashion brands like Uniqlo. The truth is, these clothes aren't being recycled, they're just being dumped. And you might not be aware, but polyester, the material used in most of Uniqlo's clothing, is a synthetic fabric that doesn't decompose easily. It takes hundreds of years for polyester to break down, and in the meantime, it's polluting our oceans and landfills. So, while Uniqlo may tout their eco-friendly initiatives, they're still pushing out cheap disposable garments that ultimately damage the planet. And let's talk about water, a key resource that Uniqlo uses at unsustainable levels in their production process. The fashion industry is one of the biggest water consumers in the world, and Uniqlo's demand for water is no exception. It takes 2,700 liters of water to produce a single t-shirt. And in water-scarce areas, these practices can have a devastating impact. Uniqlo's factories in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and China are notorious for draining local water resources while discharging untreated chemicals back into local rivers. These toxic chemicals are then absorbed by communities and ecosystems, creating a global environmental catastrophe. It's easy to get caught up in the allure of Uniqlo's cheap clothes, but the hidden cost of that bargain is a planet in peril. And even if Uniqlo is slowly changing their practices, the truth is that their current operations are still doing far more harm than good. So the next time you look at that ridiculously cheap Uniqlo t-shirt, just remember, it comes with a massive environmental footprint that you might not have considered. The end of an era, the Uniqlo you thought you knew. Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered so far. Uniqlo isn't just affordable and stylish, they're manipulating you. They're tricking you into thinking you're making an ethical choice when, in reality, you're supporting a broken system. From exploiting workers in sweatshops to flooding the world with cheap, disposable garments that contribute to environmental destruction, Uniqlo's practices are unsustainable, unethical, and frankly, unacceptable. And it's not just about the environmental cost. It's about the human cost, too. The workers who make your clothes aren't living the same comfortable life you're enjoying. They're working long hours, under unsafe conditions, earning pennies for labor that is exploited by a multi-billion-dollar company. Uniqlo's marketing may look glossy and enticing, but once you take off those rose-colored glasses, the reality is far uglier than you ever imagined. When you shop there, you're not just buying clothes. You're buying into a system that profits off exploitation, environmental damage, and lack of transparency. Now that you know the truth, the choice is in your hands. Will you continue to support Uniqlo's unethical practices, or will you demand more from the brands you buy from? Because trust me, there are other sustainable options out there. Brands that don't rely on exploitation and greenwashing to stay afloat. But here's the thing, you have the power to choose where you spend your hard-earned money, and the power to make more informed decisions about the brands you support. If we all vote with our wallets, we can force companies like Uniqlo to change or face consequences. So, what are you going to do now? Will you be part of the problem, or will you be part of the solution? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Hit like if you found this eye-opening. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the fashion world. Stay woke, stay informed, and choose wisely. See you in the next one.